It started with the wine, as most of my worst decisions do. We were at this dinner. One of those friend of a friend situations where no one really knows each other that well, and everyone's performing like it's some live audition for look how happy my relationship is. Alex was sitting beside me, polite as always, nodding along to some guy's story about his startup, while I smiled and sipped from my third glass like I wasn't one sharp turn away from saying something irreversible. It was our anniversary, not that anyone at the table knew or that it even mattered, because Alex had forgotten. Again. And maybe I could have let it go. Maybe I should have, but there was something about the way he passed the bread without looking at me like I was a coworker he didn't particularly like that made my hands go cold and my mouth go hot. So when someone asked how long we'd been married and Alex gave this sweet, tired smile and said, 5 years as of today, I laughed. Not a gentle laugh either. The kind of laugh that makes people shift in their seats. Yeah, I said, tipping my glass toward him. And not a single flower to show for it. He looked at me, and for a second, I thought maybe he'd get mad, maybe he'd pull me aside later and ask what the hell I was doing, but instead, he just smiled, that same empty smile he'd been wearing all night, and said, she's joking. Only I wasn't. Not really. Not anymore. I'd been holding in so much for so long that everything started bubbling up in the worst ways, and that was just the first pop. The next one came later, after the dinner when we were walking back to the car in that awkward silence that follows every too honest comment made in public. I was in heels that pinched, and a dress I bought just to feel seen, but he didn't even compliment it. He hadn't noticed, and maybe that was the problem. You didn't have to do that, he said finally, unlocking the car, not looking at me.
What?
Be honest. I climbed into the passenger seat and slammed the door a little harder than necessary. You embarrass me, he said, and it was the first time in weeks he said anything that wasn't a summary of his day or a reminder to buy milk. In front of everyone. They weren't your friends, I snapped. You think they care? You think anyone remembers who you are 5 minutes after you leave a room? I regretted it the moment I said it, but I didn't take it back. I never did. That's always been my thing. Say it first. Apologize never. He turned the key, didn't start the engine right away, just sat there with his hands on the wheel like he was debating something important. Why do you talk to me like I'm nothing, he asked, and it was so quiet, so still, I almost didn't catch it. I don't, I said, staring out the window, because looking at him made something in my chest twist too hard. You do, he said. You act like I'm some placeholder until something better comes along. I didn't answer, mostly because I didn't have an answer I liked. We drove home in silence. The kind of silence that feels like it's pressing on your skin, like it's taking up too much space in your lungs. I remember watching the city pass by in the window, all those little apartments glowing from inside, people laughing, cooking, arguing, living their lives, and I wonder how many of them felt like I did. Married but alone, loved but not seen. When we got inside, he went straight to the bedroom, and I stayed in the kitchen, poured another glass of wine like that would fix something, like maybe I could swallow everything I didn't want to say. I don't know what made me follow him. Maybe guilt, maybe spite, maybe just needing something to happen, even if it was ugly. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, unlacing his shoes like it was any other night, and I stood in the doorway with my glass in hand, and something reckless sitting on my tongue. You know, I said, and my voice was already bitter, I used to think you were going to change my life. He looked up, and I sipped my wine, and now I'm just trying to figure out if this is all there is. He didn't flinch. That's the thing about Alex. He doesn't explode.
He absorbs.
He stores everything somewhere quiet and cold, and I think maybe that's worse, because you never know when it's going to come back to you. So that's it, he said. You're unhappy and it's my fault? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. We just stared at each other for a long time, the kind of stare that feels like a standoff. And then I said the thing I should have never said. You've never been enough for me. He didn't move. Didn't even blink. Just sat there like someone had hit him in the chest with a shovel, and he was waiting to see if he could still breathe. And I wanted to take it back. I really did, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. Because I meant it in that moment, even if I hated myself for it later. He stood up. Quietly, walked past me without a word, grabbed his jacket from the hook, and left. He didn't slam the door. He didn't say goodbye. He just left. And I stood there in that too bright hallway with my wine glass shaking in my hand, wondering what the hell I'd done. I didn't hear from him the first night.
He didn't call. He didn't send a message.
I didn't know if he was staying with someone or just driving around trying to figure out how much of his life he was willing to walk away from. I didn't sleep. I just sat on the couch with my phone in my hand, refreshing his location like I had a right to know where he was, like I hadn't pushed him out of our apartment with words I didn't even say to hurt him, just to make him react. The second day was worse because that was when I realized he had turned off location sharing. That's when it started to feel real. Not dramatic, not a fight we'd circle back to in the morning, not some temporary silence I could break with a well-timed apology. It felt like something had shifted for good. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal, that he was just being sensitive, that everyone says things they don't mean in the middle of an argument, but the truth was I did mean it. Maybe not forever. Maybe not even the way it came out, but somewhere deep down I had been thinking it for months, and now that it was out there, I couldn't pretend it wasn't true anymore. The third day I went to work and tried to act like I wasn't unraveling. Nobody noticed. My assistant handed me coffee and asked about the client presentation. I smiled and said it was all under control. I checked my inbox like I was fine, laughed at the stupid email thread going around the office like I wasn't waiting for my husband to decide if I was worth coming home to. At lunch, I didn't eat. I just sat in my car staring at my messages, scrolling up through old texts from him. Photos of the dog we almost adopted, his updates about the neighbor's cat he pretended to hate but secretly fed, his reminders to eat when I skipped breakfast, the ones that said I love you without saying it. There weren't any dramatic declarations in our history, just consistency. And I was starting to understand how rare that was. That evening I called his sister. She didn't know where he was either. I could tell from the tone of her voice that she didn't want to be in the middle of it, that she didn't want to take sides, but also that she was holding something back. Asked if he had said anything about me, and she paused long enough for it to hurt. She finally said that he didn't want to talk about it yet, that he was figuring things out, that I should give him space. When I asked if he was okay, she said yes. When I asked if he was coming home, she said she didn't know. That was the worst part. Not the silence. Not the distance. It was the fact that even the people closest to him didn't know if this was a break or the beginning of the end. I went home and opened the drawer where he kept his keys and his watch and that stupid little screwdriver he always lost. Everything was still there. His toothbrush, his slippers by the door, the hoodie I always stole in the winter. None of it had moved. Like he hadn't left at all, except he had, and I didn't know how to act like I didn't deserve it. I made dinner and didn't eat. I drank too much wine again and drafted 5 different text messages that I deleted before I could send them. I wasn't sorry in the way people are supposed to be after a fight. I didn't feel misunderstood or victimized. I just felt tired. I didn't want to be the one who always started the fight and then waited to see if he cared enough to come find me. I was starting to think maybe he didn't. But then again, maybe he had just reached the end of how much he could take. Maybe all the times he stayed when I pushed, when I joked too hard, when I rolled my eyes in front of friends, when I shut him down in public, maybe all of that added up in his head until this one sentence, this one moment, was enough. On the 4th day, I told one of my coworkers about the fight. I didn't plan to. It just slipped out when she asked if I was okay. I said we had a fight and he left. I said I told him he wasn't enough. She didn't say anything for a second and then just nodded and said something vague about how relationships are hard. I could tell she didn't want to get into it. I didn't either. I went home that night and finally let myself cry, not the quiet kind, not the single tear down the cheek you see in movies, the real kind, the one where your chest hurts and you keep reaching for your phone and putting it back down because you don't know what would even make it better. That night, I got a message from him. It was short. Just 4 words. I need more time. I stared at the screen for a full minute. I wanted to reply. I wanted to say something that would undo everything. But I couldn't think of anything honest that would help. I couldn't promise I wouldn't do it again. I couldn't say I didn't mean it. I couldn't even say I missed him without feeling like a hypocrite.
So I didn't reply.
Instead, I went to the bathroom and brushed my teeth next to his untouched toothbrush. I got into bed and stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking about all the things I could have said differently and wondering if maybe this time he was right to leave. Because maybe I was the one who had never been enough. Not for him. For myself. And maybe he had just finally figured it out before I did. It was a Saturday when I finally saw him again. I hadn't planned it. I didn't even know if he was still in the city. I'd spent most of the week telling people I was fine, pretending to be busy, filling my time with errands I didn't care about just to make the hours pass without staring at the wall. I went to the grocery store and walked the aisles like I was shopping for two people out of habit, picking up things he liked and then putting them back on the shelf. I took longer showers and stayed up too late, scrolling through old photos of us like it was some kind of research project, as if I was trying to understand how we got from there to here. I still hadn't replied to his message. I told myself I was giving him space, but the truth was I didn't know what I would say. I didn't want to tell him I was sorry and have it sound like an empty gesture. I didn't want to ask him to come home if I wasn't even sure I deserved to have him there. When I saw him, it was at the cafe we used to go to every Sunday. I hadn't planned to be there, not really. I was walking through the neighborhood because I didn't want to be in the apartment, and my feet just brought me there without asking. I wasn't thinking. I just walked in like I used to and stood in line without realizing what I was doing until I looked up and saw him sitting by the window. He was alone, laptop open, coffee half full, typing something with that familiar focus he always had. He didn't see me at first. I could have walked out, and maybe I should have, but I didn't. I just stood there watching him, waiting to feel something clear. But nothing about it felt clear. It was like looking at a stranger you used to know too well, someone who knew what your face looked like when you were brushing your teeth and didn't want to be awake yet. Then he looked up and saw me. He didn't look surprised, just tired. He closed his laptop and gave me a small nod, like he was inviting me to sit if I wanted to. I ordered coffee I didn't want, walked over, and sat across from him. Neither of us spoke right away. It wasn't tense, just quiet in that way where no one's pretending anymore. I looked at him, and he looked older than he had 2 weeks ago. Maybe I did too. So, he said finally, "How have you been?" "I don't know," I said.
Weird.
Like I'm stuck in someone else's life. He nodded like he understood. Same. I didn't ask where he had been.
He didn't offer to tell me.
We both knew it didn't really matter. I stared at my coffee and thought about how easy it used to be to talk to him, how we used to have entire conversations with just glances or a hand on the shoulder, how now everything felt like a minefield. I thought maybe he would start, maybe he would ask why I said what I said. But he didn't. He just waited. "I haven't responded to your message," I said. I didn't know what to say. "That's okay," he replied. "I didn't really expect you to." "Why not?" "Because I think you're still figuring out if you meant it." I didn't say anything. He was right. I'd spent more time thinking about that sentence than anything else. I wanted to believe I had just said it out of frustration, but it wasn't that simple. There were pieces of truth inside it, pieces I hadn't been willing to look at until it was too late. I looked at him, and I wanted to say I didn't mean it, but I couldn't say it without lying. And maybe that's what hurt the most. I didn't say it to hurt you. I told him. I said it because I didn't know how else to make you see me. He looked down at his hands. "I always saw you." "Then why didn't it feel like it?" "Maybe because you were looking for something I didn't know how to give." "I wanted more." "I know. And you didn't want to give it." He paused. "It's not that I didn't want to. I just didn't know that what I was giving wasn't enough." It was hard to hear. Not because it was mean, but because it was honest. I wanted to be angry, but I couldn't be. He had always done his best. I just hadn't known what to do with it. I kept thinking he would change, that one day he would wake up and become the version of him that existed in my head, the one who fought harder, who showed up louder, who made me feel like I was the center of his world even when I didn't deserve to be. But he wasn't that person. He was just Alex. And that had always been the point. "I didn't want to be the reason you felt small," I said. "But you did," he said, not unkindly. "And I didn't want to be the person you resented for not being someone else." We sat in silence for a while. Not the kind that needed to be filled. Just the kind that let everything settle. Eventually, he glanced at the door. "I should go," he said. I nodded. "Are you coming back?" "I don't know," he said. Are you still waiting for someone who isn't me? I didn't answer.
And he didn't press.
He got up, nodded again, and walked out. And I sat there staring at the empty seat across from me, trying to figure out if I had just watched him leave for the last time, or if this was just the part where we both had to stop pretending we were still the same people we used to be. I kept thinking he would reach out. Not because he had a reason to, but because for so long that's what he did. He was the one who softened first, the one who fixed things, even when I was the one who broke them. Every time we fought, no matter how cold I was or how unfair, he was the one who came back with some quiet gesture that said he was ready to let it go. But not this time. I checked my phone constantly. I reread that last conversation so many times I had it memorized. The way he said he didn't know if he was coming back, the way he asked if I was still waiting for someone who wasn't him. He had asked that like he already knew the answer, and maybe he did. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted until I lost it. That's how most people learn, I guess. Not because someone teaches them, but because life strips it away piece by piece until all that's left is whatever you were too proud to say out loud. A week passed. Then another. I started sleeping on his side of the bed, because mine felt too close to the edge. I stopped eating dinner at the table and started eating over the sink. I tried to clean up, put things in order, but everything I touched felt like his. Even the stupid slippers by the door that he never wore. I went through my clothes and found a hoodie of his shoved in the back of the closet, and for some reason I sat on the floor and cried for a long time, not because I missed him, but because I couldn't understand how I had been so careless with something that had been real. The silence became normal. I stopped expecting a text every time my phone buzzed. I stopped pretending I had something to do when I got home. I didn't talk to anyone about it because I didn't want the questions. Everyone always asks what happened like there's one moment that explains everything. There wasn't. It was years of little things. Years of me wanting more and never saying what that meant. Years of him giving everything he had and me deciding it wasn't enough because it didn't look the way I thought it should. People want to believe that relationships end with a bang, that someone cheated or lied or did something unforgivable, but sometimes they end because someone got tired of trying to prove they were worth staying for. Then I found out. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, trying to stay distracted when my friend Melissa sent me a message that just said, "Is Alex seeing someone?" I stared at it for a minute before typing back. Why? She didn't respond right away, and that pause told me everything. She finally sent a photo. It was him, sitting outside a bar I didn't recognize, next to a woman I didn't know. She had her hand on his arm, and he was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. My chest went cold. Not because he owed me anything, but because it felt like a confirmation. Like something had ended, and he had started something new. I wanted to believe it didn't matter, that I had let him go. But the truth was I hadn't. I had just been waiting for him to forgive me, without asking. I didn't say anything to him that night. I didn't send a message or call. I just stared at the photo and thought about all the times I made him feel like he wasn't enough. I thought about how quiet he got near the end, how he stopped trying to explain himself, how he just watched me become someone he didn't recognize anymore. I thought about the way I used to look at him like he was supposed to be grateful I chose him, like I had done him some favor by being there. And now he was sitting with someone else, and I was the one left behind. 2 days later, I sent him a message. Not to ask questions or accuse him of anything, but just to say something. I said I saw the photo. I said I hoped he was happy. I didn't say I was sorry, because I wasn't sure what kind of sorry would even matter at this point. He didn't reply until the next day. It was short. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I just can't keep waiting for something that's never going to change." That was it.
No anger. No defensiveness.
Just the truth. I didn't write back. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't make things worse.
He was right.
He had waited long enough. He had given me every chance to meet him halfway, and I spent years thinking I was above him, that I needed more, that there was something else out there that would make me feel whole. And now I was alone with the silence I thought I wanted. It's strange how quickly someone becomes a memory. I still hear his voice sometimes when I'm making coffee or brushing my teeth. I still check the locks at night the way he used to, even though he's not there to forget. I still catch myself wanting to send him something funny I saw online before I remember that we don't talk anymore. I used to think the worst part of a breakup was the yelling, the anger, the slammed doors. But the real worst part is the absence. When there's no more fighting because there's nothing left to fight for. When the person who used to know everything about you now lives a life that has nothing to do with you. I saw him again after 2 months. I wasn't expecting it. It was one of those random moments when you think your day is going to be like any other, and then it isn't. I had stopped at a bookstore after work, mostly because I didn't want to go home yet. I had started doing that more, walking slower, taking the long way back, finding excuses to avoid the apartment. I didn't change anything about the place. I kept his things where they were, not because I was hoping he'd come back, but because removing them felt too final. I'd pass his toothbrush every morning, see his old sweater in the closet, ignore the boxes I told myself I'd deal with eventually. I was flipping through a book I wasn't going to buy when I looked up and saw him walk in. He wasn't alone. It was the same woman from the photo. She walked beside him, like they'd done this before. They were laughing at something, and he looked relaxed in a way that made me feel like I'd never really known him at all. He didn't see me at first. I could have left. I probably should have. But I didn't move. I just watched. They were standing by the travel section. She said something and leaned into him. He nodded, then looked up. Our eyes met. For a second, he didn't react. Just looked at me like he couldn't believe I was there. Then he gave a small nod. Polite, like he didn't know what to do with me now. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I turned around and walked out pretending I didn't care, but my hands were shaking and I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. That night, I finally packed his things. I didn't cry. I didn't listen to sad music or have some emotional breakdown. I just opened the drawers and folded each item like I was doing a chore for someone else. I didn't know what to do with the box when I was finished. I set it by the front door and left it there for a week. Part of me wanted to text him and tell him to come get it. Another part of me knew that would be a waste of time. He wasn't coming back. I had made sure of that. People don't return to places where they were made to feel like an afterthought. I started going out more. Not because I wanted to meet someone new, but because being in the apartment made everything louder. I didn't talk about him with anyone. Not because I didn't think about him, but because I was tired of hearing myself explain things I couldn't fix. People asked questions anyway. My coworkers started treating me differently, like I was a story they'd heard half of. A couple of them tried to set me up with someone. I declined. I wasn't ready. I wasn't even sure I believed in trying again. I wasn't heartbroken the way movies make it look. I didn't fall apart in public or call him late at night begging him to come home. I just felt like something had gone missing inside me, and I wasn't sure if it was him or just the part of me that used to know how to be with someone. One night, after too much wine, I messaged him. I knew I shouldn't, but I did it anyway. I told him I was sorry. Not for one thing in particular, just sorry for all of it. For how I talked to him, for what I said, for how I never really saw what he was trying to give me. I told him I hoped she was good to him. I told him I meant it. He didn't respond. Not the next day, not the next week. And that silence hurt in a way that nothing else had. That silence was final. Not angry. Not bitter.
Just gone.
That's when I understood that I had broken something that couldn't be repaired. Not because he wasn't willing, but because I had pushed him too far for too long. I think about him when I see people holding hands or laughing in restaurants. I think about him when I walk past our old coffee place or hear a song he liked. I don't cry anymore, but I still feel it. The space where he used to be. The conversations we won't have. The trips we won't take. The future I thought we were building that I threw away because I couldn't recognize what love looked like unless it came wrapped in chaos. I thought I needed more. I thought I was meant for something bigger, louder, more intense. But what I needed was right in front of me, and I didn't know how to be satisfied with peace. I don't tell people the full truth when they ask why it ended. I say we grew apart or we wanted different things. Nobody really wants to hear that you ruined something good just because you didn't understand how to keep it. Nobody wants to hear that you walked away from a man who loved you because you were too focused on what he wasn't. The truth is ugly, and it makes people uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable.
But I live with it now.
I live with it every time I sit alone on the couch he picked out, every time I make dinner for one, every time I reach for my phone, and remember there's no one to send that thought to anymore. I said he'd never be enough for me. And maybe I was right. But now I'm alone. And all I can think about is how he was always there. How he never stopped trying until I gave him a reason to. How, in the end, he didn't leave because he stopped loving me. He left because I gave him no reason to stay.